Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi, this being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Charmed, as well as the latest episode of American Gods. Like always, I'm going to talk about something you want to listen to. You can always look in the description down below. I include the time I'm going to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Charmed, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of American Gods. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Charmed. A great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Obviously, the girls meet their new white lighter, Tessa, which is kind of another thing from the original show, because it's actually kind of interesting, because it seems like it might be a little bit of a longer thing. I don't think they had their new white lighter that long in the original series. I could have sworn it was almost like a one-episode thing. It might have been longer. I don't remember. But nevertheless, obviously, Tessa is not Harry. Tessa's kind of pushing him because it's almost like, ooh, Harry's coddled you this entire time. Was like, here I am. I need you to memorize spells from the book of the Book of Shadows. We need to work on Macy getting rid of her demon side. But it's like, no, my demon side can help. It's like, no. That's evil. You're a charmed one. Like, the fact is, where you getting an idea like that? Oh, you got it from Charity. So no, we're not listening to anything that Charity might have to say about this whole situation. Obviously, the charmed ones have to be a lot more careful about what they say. They have to light up candles to make it so that it's like a privacy spell, so they can't overhear everything they say, because they even have to be like, oh yeah, Harry's going, because they can't let them know that Harry's, in the process of getting treated from Fiona and everything. So what we also learned, interestingly enough, though, is that white lighters, all their powers come from the same source. So when one of them gets stripped of their powers, the others feel it. Now that, to me, seems like such an interesting little detail that maybe, lo and behold, it's kind of skipping around, but maybe that has something tied to what Fiona wants to do. I mean, because I think that's a source of mass power that if you corrupted that could be a big force for evil. Maybe that's something someone has in mind. Maybe that's something Fiona has in mind. Maybe that's what she's trying to get from outside of Harry's head, because white lighters are connected. Maybe because he wasn't fully restored as a white lighter yet, that it was harder to get to the information, that even though he's not a white lighter anymore, maybe somewhere in his brain that information is there, it's just locked away. Maybe she has to get to it a certain point in time before the white lighter in him is completely gone. Maybe that's what that is. Maybe it's something else entirely, but there's definitely something in Harry's head. That would make the most sense, since they happen to drop this information like literally the next episode, so it makes you go, I don't know. Either way, there's some stuff that goes down. It seems like maybe there's a vampire involved. All this happens while Galvin comes back, and like him and Macy's obviously happy to see him, but I love they had to cover up the fact is because they can't let Tessa know about Galvin and all that. They go to Mama Rose about the artifacts he got over his trip, and it's like, okay, so maybe something followed him back. Lo and behold, it turns out the thing that followed him back was Galvin himself. It's this creature known as an Abiku. Now, the fact is, it brought up an interesting thing of like, how much do the Charmed ones know about Yoruba? I guess the whole point was because it's part of that, Yoruba family, and so it's like if she knew enough about it, she'd know that I'm not Galvin. So I guess it just wanted to make sure. Okay, so Macy won't suspect anything. I guess that's the whole point. But I feel almost like there might be something more to that, at least we might cover later on. The fact is they made such a point to be like, oh, it's a part of the Yoruba family. Like, we don't know how, like, what other effects, like, those artifacts might be. I mean, because like I said, Mama Rose wasn't able to kind of fully examine. Well, I assume she examined all of them without there being issues, so I thought that in itself was kind of a fascinating thing. This also ties in with like Maggie's ability. Like, now when Tessa was originally telling her that, I was like, maybe Tessa's just assuming something and she's just saying that because like there's actually something else going on here, but Tessa's not really paying too much attention. She's like, oh, I'm assuming it's that's actually something else going on. But it's like, no, it turned out to be the case. Maggie's ability is expanding to the point not only can she hear people's feelings, she can also hear souls that are in torment. It's her powers trying to expand. She doesn't even have to touch someone to obviously hear their soul, but touching them, obviously, like, that's a situation of like immediately, like, that's how she activates her power and kind of like controls it in that extent. So, but as the episode progresses, she is kind of expanding upon that, and she ends up finding out the soul that's out of the body is Galvin's, and it turns into this whole situation of, now there's a way to get rid of it because they learned from Mama Rose the dagger is the option, and when they try to use it on Galvin, like, Macy doesn't want to because she's worried that it might actually kill Galvin, but Tessa's like, well, we have to take that chance. It's like, I'll get you a new boyfriend, which is kind of like, you would think, I guess it shows you just the mindset that the elders and a lot of other people might have of like whatever. It's not even just about the connection that Macy has with Galvin, which that's one thing. But another thing is it's an innocent person that you'd be potentially killing. So the fact is you're willing to take those chances is kind of something not everyone else is. And that's what makes the Charmed One so special, is that they are willing to not give up on anyone. Like the lady that was possessed before, it was all about, she was possessed by the Harbinger and everything. It's like, oh, we just give up on her. But like, Mel and them didn't want to give up, and lo and behold, they were able to save her without incident. So it's kind of that same principle applies in this situation. I do love that Maggie ended up using the spell she learned that she just happened to memorize, because she's like, she wants us to memorize it, and she used that very spell to block Tessa long enough for Macy to go all using her dark power, kind of something dark side. Just using her powers to stop Galvin's heart long enough to force, a Bhikkhu out. And now he obviously, it's so interesting because it's not, I guess it's a combination of like, hey, like, I'm lucky that one of the Charmed Ones happens to have been dead and brought back to life. So it actually makes her the perfect host. But I don't know if it was necessarily because it's like, oh, she's got powers and stuff like that. But I think that was just kind of an added bonus. I guess he always want to go for powerful beings that are habitable bodies. In this case, like, oh, a dead body. So I'm curious what would have been the end result of that whole situation. But nevertheless, luckily when it was all said and done, they were able to stop the Bhikkhu working together and save Galvin. Tessa still kind of is like, the fact is, I'm not trying to ruin your regular lives and stuff like that. You can have them, just don't let it interfere with your lives. Like, because obviously she has a very more strict kind of like militant, almost kind of like boom, 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 like of how to handle this whole situation. I'm training you, I'm putting you through kind of the trenches and stuff like that, because you have to be prepared, because you guys are super unprepared, because you're the Charmed Ones. Your whole grand destiny is to fight the source of all evil. That's your main thing. It's kind of like the ultimate task, because it's the ultimate battle of good versus evil. So literally everything kind of depends on it, because once again, the whole apocalypse thing. So you get it, but at the same time, Harry was there kind of supporting them in a role, in a way that Tessa doesn't necessarily, but we are seeing her kind of willing to give them a chance. She is kind of super against the whole Macy having her demon side thing, because it's like, you're controlling it now, but it won't be forever. But Macy's like, my demon side might be what we need necessarily to finish, to fight this source of all evil. The twist in this situation is you might have Parker's dad pushing him in a situation that he's supposed to be the source of all evil. I mean, it seems like Macy might be a potential host as well, just because of her whole situation of having like a demon side of her. I mean, it probably won't necessarily make her full-on half demon, half human. I mean, she's a witch, so I don't know if that categorizes her as something else too. It, like, because I don't know if witches are categorized in the human category. I feel like among supernaturals, they're considered their own category, so it's not the same thing. So she might be, she might not be. It might still just be straight up Parker might be like the perfect option and all of that. Which I'm curious, do they know about the whole Parker situation? Like that's still a continuous relationship and stuff like that. They super don't agree with like Macy and Galvin being together. He's a normal human, shouldn't have gotten involved in all this. If they found out like, oh, Macy's got her demon side and Maggie's dating half demon, like that'd be a whole other can of worms in itself. So, but sadly, when it's all said and done, Galvin does break up with Macy because he can't be a part of all this. And it's so interesting what they're doing with his story, because it's kind of a little similar to what happened with Daryl's story in a sense in the original series, because like obviously like the whole supernatural side of things kind of caught up and caused issues in his life. He literally almost died because it almost got executed. It's a whole thing, but obviously if you know what I'm referencing, so it's almost like that, but just for him it's like it caused him so much pain. And the fact of the matter, it's scary, like that thing used him to kill people, and so at least 2 people he's aware of, so obviously he's going to be super reluctant to kind of be willing to side with Macy. And it's so sad because Macy felt so good at first, because it's like, oh, Galvin completely understands, he supports my decision to keep my demon side, but it's like that was the Bhikkhu, and now when it comes to the real Galvin, of course, maybe if it was before this situation, maybe he would have been more siding with her, but now after his recent experience and seeing Macy the way she is when she taps into her dark powers, I mean, she looks pretty scary, her eyes going pure black like that, but it is a situation of, because for him it's like, I know you're not bad, but something inside of you is. And she's like, wait, you really think that? Like, because for him, it's like, the fact of the matter is, I know you're a good person, but whatever is there inside of you, it's not good. It's evil. And the fact of the matter is, I just can't be around you, and just all of this, because I think for him, because even if he got rid of her demon side, I think no matter what, things would still never work out, because it's that sad thing of like, these two worlds just can't really mesh, just because, it can work, obviously, we know from the original series it can, but obviously with their current lives, it's just like, it seems so impossible. And that's the hardest thing about making relationships like this actually work in the end, those differences of like, the world you live in, because she lives in this supernatural world and he just lives in this normal world, knowing that the supernatural exists. I think it's that situation though, like once there is no going back. So I'm assuming they're still going to see each other at work, which is going to be awkward. And it sucks, because it's like, especially through everything of like him learning about the supernatural, and the fact, that shows you how much he cares about her. Obviously, he went through hell and back to literally find a cure for her. But in the end, like obviously Macy doesn't want to get rid of her demon side because she feels like it can come in handy. Now that's going to be the interesting thing to see whether or not it is something she ends up having to burn away later on, or will it be something she's able to keep for the rest of the series? I don't know. That's definitely going to be interesting. I would have never guessed like a charmed one having demon powers. That's super cool. So I personally would hope that she gets to keep it, because I think some badass stuff could end up happening, but we never know. Like there could be a huge downside to it. Maybe there is a point that she can't control it. Maybe something happens and mutates the demon blood in her, and it starts kind of corrupting her more and more and more, and she does lose control. We'll have to wait and see in that regard. Another side of this episode is the whole male situation, the whole awkward thing of like, oh yeah, the bachelorette party for Nico and Greta is at the place that Mel works. It's like, oh, that sucks when you have to literally watch your girlfriend, who she doesn't remember she was your girlfriend in an alternate timeline, get married and be happy with someone else, especially after you just broke up with your current girlfriend. It's like, it's just boom, boom, boom. It's just like stacked against you. Then she hears Maggie and Mel talking about, Nico overhears him talking about demons and stuff like that. She confronts Mel later on, and Mel's like, what, I'm not going to hide any more stuff from you. Because the fact of the matter, it's already taken its toll on her. The fact is, Nico's figured out a lot of stuff anyway. Like, yeah, some stuff is like weird around this situation. So she ends up revealing, hey, I'm a witch. Okay, we're going to talk about this later, just not right now. And it's like, dude. Which I've always made the comparison between Nico and Andy, Andy and Prue's whole situation. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that goes, especially when Mel explains everything. Then she's probably going to eventually be like, okay, the truth about is like, we were together, you just don't remember it. And it's going to be like, oh, that's going to get complicated, especially because Nico's engaged, and maybe kind of have that happy thing of like, oh yeah, let's call off the engagement, but it's kind of a happy thing, but it's also kind of a messed up thing, because it's like, oh, you had this entire life together. I don't want to kind of mess that up. I'm curious then, considering that particular situation, would Mel actually tell Nico or not? Because she'd want her to be happy and everything. I'll tell her the truth, but I probably won't tell her everything, because it'd be so much more complicated to tell her everything. Or maybe she will. Maybe Nico just won't believe her or have a hard time believing her, and that will eventually kind of cause a break between her and Gretchen's relationship. I have no idea how that will play out. I'm interested to find out, though. But the real kick, there's a whole situation with Mel discovering what happened to Zarkana. Apparently Fiona just snapped and basically killed everyone. For whatever reason, I don't know. Then there's a whole situation of like Jada fortunately still being alive. I thought that would have sucked if Mel, like, no matter where her and, Jada stand, it still would have sucked if she had went in there and found her dead. But like the rest of the Sarkana is, and it's like, well, why did she do that? I guess for her it's like, well, because the fact of the matter is, they're probably thinking of like, oh, the fact of the matter is, they look at her as like, oh, she's the flame keeper. The fact of the matter is, she's this, point of good. She's going to be, they're standing up against the corruption that is the elders in their way. But the fact of the matter is, being locked in Tartarus for so long probably drove her insane. To be fair, we also don't know. Maybe she might have had a visitor in Tartarus that kind of shifted her down the lane that she's in. I mean, to be fair, like, Alistair and his whole situation might coincide exactly with Fiona. It might not be like two separate things. Those might be one and the same issue. Maybe at some point in time they became the same issue. Maybe they're not. Maybe they are just two separate issues. It's definitely going to be interesting to see. That'd be interesting, especially considering the fact is that Alistair recruited Charity a couple episodes back, so that'd be really interesting, especially considering how much Fiona hates her sister. So that's why I kind of feel like that's probably not going to be the case, but we'll see. But I mean, I guess because for her, she probably grew past this arcana. It's like they probably started questioning a lot of the stuff she did. Because like even Jada before was like, no, should we really be doing this? Like, what about, it's like, no, like you could easily tell. It's like, oh, Fiona was all about her own, like, I guess, like I said, this is her need for revenge. That's what's motivating her. That's why she's doing all that she's doing, because she wants, you know, to make the elders pay. I think she wants to burn it to the ground, and I think that's, you know, like I said, her mind just got corrupted for all those years of being trapped in Tartarus, you know, being tortured by her own mind. It's enough to make anyone go crazy. I mean, we saw the toll it took on, like, Maggie and Harry for being in there as long as they were. I mean, definitely took a toll on Harry. Who knows, you know, what real toll it took on Fiona being in there for years, especially considering it was the elders that locked her up in there. So, of course, this is all about revenge. So she doesn't care what the Sarkano wants. Like, they want to stand up to the elders, so they go against their rules and stuff like that, but probably don't want to go to the full extent of probably killing them like Fiona does. But we'll see. And obviously Harry's caught in the middle of this, and the girls are going to try and do whatever they can to, well, ladies, because I feel like it's probably, you know, not probably, it feels a little disrespectful just referring to them, just girls. Nevertheless, the Charmed Ones are going to try and, you know, save Harry, but obviously, like, they can't let the elders know what they're up to and stuff like that. They're going to try and use Tessa because of all the, I mean, that seems like that's obviously that's another reason why they're bringing up that whole point of, like, they're all connected, because this can lead them to Harry, but I feel like there might be some more to that whole situation. Like, but once again, we'll have to wait and see. I'm so curious to find out, like, you know, what it is that Fiona's up to, what she has planned, you know, what part does Harry have to play in this? Am I right about everything I was talking about? Another interesting thing, though, I thought was kind of pretty neat, and I never really thought about that, was the whole aspect of, like, oh yeah, because Maggie found out that Macy and her had the same dad, she's now finding, like, wait, I never really took time to process it, but I'm half black, half Latino, and I'm like, that's so interesting, because it never crossed my mind to even think that. Didn't even make me, it wasn't until near the end of the episode, I was like, right, there's the reverse, like, because, like, Macy has never really brought that up, that whole dual culture aspect. I wonder how much, well, because to be fair, like, well, I guess it's there to a certain extent, but, like, I guess that depends on, like, her stepmom or whoever raised her. Well, we do know she got adopted, so, because the thing is, she probably, because I was about to say, because, like, yeah, at least they grew up with their mom, so the Latino side of their family, you know, like, you know, at least for Maggie, she got to experience that, but, like, for her, it's like, here's another culture that I know nothing about, that's a part of me, and I just thought that was actually such a fascinating, it's like a little thing about the character I thought was so fascinating. I was like, huh. It's kind of interesting, and it's kind of befitting, because obviously, like, Macy's going through her own identity crisis, because it's like, you know, like, this demon side of me and everything, where you have Maggie telling Macy, it's like, when it's all said and done, you're good, and nothing is ever going to change that. You know, your two halves aren't less because of it. Just because you have these two different halves, it doesn't make you less of, you know, doesn't make you any lesser. And I thought that was kind of nice, because, you know, and, you know, Macy's telling Maggie she should take her own advice in that situation, you know, of, like, not being so hard on herself, because she felt bad, because she's like, I don't want to take it. She's like, I don't want to use the system in the sense of, like, oh, I just found out I'm half black. I don't want to. She feels like I think she feels like she's taking from a system that more people could, you know, be in use of. But obviously, she's going to use it as an opportunity to learn more about that side of herself. She just doesn't want to, you know, rely on that for, like, paying off her education, you know. Because she probably feels like that's not really my culture. Like, I've grown up for like 18 years being Latino, so I'm gonna stay there, but learn about and not try and, you know, use the benefits from the other side of her. And I thought, I don't know, it was just kind of an interesting aspect to it that I was just like I said, prior to mentioning it, it never really crossed my mind to even think that, you know. So I just thought that was kind of a nice little detail to the episode too. So overall, I'm very fascinated to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. And now moving on to this week's episode of American Gods, a great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, a big part of this episode is kind of us finally learning a lot more about Mads. We've gotten a little bit here and there, but this is our first time really fully getting his story, because obviously it seems like Mad is going well, a little mad, because it seems like he's seeing stuff. He sees these women kind of crying at the funeral home, but everyone else is just seeing it as, oh, they're just women weeping and crying over someone they lost. But for him, it's like, no, I see them for what they are. They're banshees. I guess because he is so close to death, he's starting to see things that no one else is willing to see. I guess maybe that's how the whole situation works with banshees. Maybe they only appear to those who are potentially going to die. Maybe that's what it is, because no one else could hear it. So I think that's supposed to be the key sign, because ain't that supposed to be like how banshees work anyway? Only you can hear their cry, because you hearing their cry means that you're going to die. So that was really interesting. But nevertheless, we end up finding out like a little bit more about why Mad is, well, mad, because he was cursed. But the crazy thing about it is, obviously, it seems like he doesn't know what's the truth, because for him, it's like he remembers bits about himself, but then again, he's like, but I don't know if that's real or if that's fake. He ends up talking to quite a few different people this episode. He ends up talking to Bilquis, he ends up talking to Shadow, he ends up talking to Salim, even talking to Ibis, and it leads to very different things. Obviously, there's the whole conversation he has with Shadow, because he's basically trying to warn Shadow about everything. It's like, keep that spear away from your wife, because Wednesday left Gungnir after putting it together. It's like, yo, watch over it like you would be guarding my life, which is so interesting. That speaks volumes in itself. It's like, you're willing to let Shadow look after your most precious weapon. And the fact is, even Satan, that even beyond that, he has big plans for Shadow, which we'll get into that later. But he's saying, don't let that thing near your wife, because all it does is bring rot. I'm wondering, does he mean just because it would naturally just brings destruction to anything in nearby? Or does he mean literally rot, as in it would make her rot and die if she's near the spear? But obviously Shadow's not really want to listen to, because he's like, well, why are you even saying that? He's like, you have been warned. Basically trying to tell Shadow, it's like, it feels good. The All-Father's got his, eyes on you. You feel like the world's shining upon you. But the fact of the matter is, that's how you feel today. Tomorrow, you basically be the dog that he kicks around. And it's like, why do you let him kick you around? Essentially, Mad trying to tell Shadow, it's like, you and me are in the same situation. It's like, stay away from him. He's like, the fact of the matter is, Wednesday, me, hell, all the gods, stay away from them. It's like, essentially saying all gods are assholes, so stay away from them. He's even, and it's so interesting, because to be fair, he tried to warn Shadow last season at the beginning of like, don't take this job from Wednesday. He's even bringing it up. I literally told you not to join up with him. The fact of the matter is, you made a deal with him. You sold yourself away, and you don't even know what the price is. You haven't paid the price yet, but eventually you will. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see how that ends up playing out. But because I think when Mad looks at Shadow, he sees himself. He sees who he was before he got mixed up with Wednesday, because of all the terrible shit Wednesday had him do. We don't know if that's all it is, but that must be the one terrible thing that like Wednesday's had him do. Kill Laura, or at least lead to her death. Just because it's like, that's the one thing he goes back to. So I think Wednesday's had him do some other stuff, but I think that's the one that really messed him up. It's like, yeah, Laura might not have been like the best person, but she didn't deserve to die like that. So I think that's been weighing heavy on his conscience. And so he's talking to Bilquis, and she's trying to tell him, whoa, that's not, because she's heard many different stories about Mad. What's also really interesting, too, like we see her kind of being a priest and everything, she's kind of having a sermon and everything, and even, like, Mad is like, oh, so that's how you get your rocks off this day, which is interesting, but I guess, like, seeing how things worked with Ruby last time, I guess she's kind of taking advantage of that situation. I figured she would, but I was so curious to see how she would handle it, but it's like, she's found a new outlet, because she had talked about it before, like how Jesus got people to follow him. So she's kind of trying to take that path, and she's trying to incorporate that and how she gets followers. That's how she gets her feel. Because I even love Mads being like, oh, so no like endless hole anymore. The whole like sucking people up into her vagina essentially. And it's like, oh yeah, she's like, I kind of moved past that. Like people adapt, and so have I. So this is her adapting and trying to find a new way. Now, what I thought was so fascinating is the fact is that Bilquis was the one that was trying to get inside of Mad's head and telling him, like, is that right? Like, as his story was being told, it's like, is that right? And it's so interesting to me, because I think I guess it kind of shows you, because that whole conversation came up earlier in the episode too, because Ifrit was like, we can't trust Bilquis. And the fact of the matter is, you have Wednesday being like, whoa, you dangle enough good enough bait in front of people, they'll kind of choose their sides like that. So, but to me, the fact is Bilquis was pushing Mad to remember truth. It wasn't just in that one point. It seemed like the entire episode her voice was kind of echoing, and even when everything kind of goes down to the end, which I'll get to soon enough, it's like, it seemed like she was almost hoping for it. Because I think she wanted to take advantage of this situation. I guess it shows that she's actually chose Mr. World's side, and that she's trying to dismantle everything from the inside, like she did before. At least attempting to. That's what it seemed like. It's really interesting. I'm curious. I feel like Bilquis definitely had her own motives for doing that. Or maybe she legitimately was just trying to help out Mad. I have no idea. Maybe because she kind of knows what it's like to be lost like that, and so she wanted to try and help him. Maybe in the pessimist I am, it's like, nah, she was doing that on purpose. But maybe she was trying to do it out of the kindness of her. I just feel like she had ulterior motives. But either way, he ends up talking to Celine. And that was a really interesting conversation, because for him, it's like the fact of the matter is, me and Ifrit have our reasons for being here. This has nothing to do with you. You could just walk away. Obviously, you're only here for Ifrit. The fact is, you have maybe like 80 good years, on the dial. Just walk away from this. But it's like, I can't, even though this has nothing to do with me, Ifrit's staying here, so I will. You do that for love. And he's like, if Wednesday, like, do you think he would do the same thing for you? And honestly, I don't know if Ifrit would. I think he would. I think he cares that much about something, but I don't know. But he was like, what do you think he would do if Wednesday asked him to kill you? And he's like, wait, what? And he was like, never mind. Which makes me almost seem like it might not be him admitting that he loves Laura, but it might be a situation of showing that, like, hey, he admits that, hey, I care about her, because he was trying to put Celine in his situation without really giving too many details. But you could tell, like, the obvious parallels that he was trying to create there, because it's like, what do I do? Because Wednesday's like, do what I told you to do and kill Laura Moon, because, obviously, like, Mads is like, no, I'm done with this. I did what you wanted me to do. I lost my coin in the process. Like, why don't you just take it? It's like, I need to take involuntary. It's like, you could just do whatever you want. He's like, unlike you, Odin, Wednesday, I have, he basically has, like, morals. He has a code that he follows. And obviously, he's like, I don't want to be a part of this. You owe me a battle. And he's like, forget your code and everything like that. Just kill Laura Moon. And it's like, now Matt is kind of stuck in that place of, like, you don't have to do what Wednesday says, but if he wants to get what he wants to get, then he has to. So he tries to say no on multiple occasions, trying to walk away from the whole situation. So I just thought that was kind of fascinating. But what we end up learning about Mad is that, from Ibis, as well as a combination of just, like, the little flashes we get. Because I thought what Ibis said was so fascinating. It's basically like, the truth. Sometimes, a storyteller doesn't concern himself too much about the truth. The stories that are told are sometimes truer than the truth itself. And I thought that was such a fascinating thing. And I think with everything kind of playing out, I kind of understand what he was going for. That basically, the stories you tell can sometimes reveal more of a truth than even the truth, like, says. Like, a story can... There's so much you can extrapolate from a story that might bring forth even more truth than your normal truth would. So we end up learning that, like, Mad isn't just like a leprechaun. I mean, maybe he is just a leprechaun, but he is like a god too. He's a god of luck, a god of art, a god of craft, a god of the sun. That basically... everything that's valuable to a civilization is what he stood for. The fact is, he was very good with his spear, which is interesting considering the fact is, like, in his mind, it's like, oh, there was a lady he was hooking up with who had foresight, and she was like, oh, you're going to die by spear, which is ironic considering the fact is he's good with his spear. That's why I said that. And then there's the whole thing about, like, oh yeah, it turns out he had a wife named Yurin and a daughter named Moira. But then at one point you see him out in the woods and he's eating, like, bugs and stuff like that. And he seems a little off his rocker because even the mom was trying to warn the child. But it seems like it stems from the fact is that, I guess that's because every time he kept referencing the gray monks, I think he was kind of referring to basically either Catholics or Christians. Essentially, every time someone came near trying to spread their, like, kind of erase what was already there in Ireland, the history, the gods and stuff there with new religions, he would stand up and fight and push them back. And the Grey Monks popped up, like I said, like the church popped up. And he stood up there, he challenged them, and, you know, even killed a priest. And that said priest he killed by spear, and a bishop cursed him to basically drive him mad. And so when the time came, like, obviously because I forgot what the circumstances were that led to him on the battlefield having known the vision of, like, what was going to happen. He learned that, like, no, he heard the banshees cry before he went on a battlefield and knew how he was going to die. And he ran away. He abandoned everything. The war, his title, his kingdom, his wife, his family, all of it. Even his own mind he left behind and went mad. And, you know, because that's what his wife was trying to tell him. It's like, we lost everything. We lost the war. And he was like, wait, how do we do that? Because, like, obviously at that point he had gone a little insane. And obviously his mind, he couldn't remember everything. And then, you know, we learn, you know, Ibis is telling the story of, like, oh yeah, you killed your grandfather because he got in a prophecy about the fact is that his grandchild would come to kill him. And then you have Matt being like, whoa, that's not correct. It wasn't Bulger, my grandfather. Who was it? And then it's like, it was Wednesday's head. I'm like, so you killed Odin in the past? I was like, I didn't understand it. And then it clicked in my head. And especially when Matt says it later on, you were always the battle I was meant to fight. The fight I was looking for, you were always my war, Wednesday. And I'm like, because it's a story that revealed a truth to him. Like, it's a truth that was truer than the truth, you know? And I thought that was so fascinating. I was like, okay, so I was like, so, you know, in that story, it made him realize, because, you know, obviously he was confused, but it was like that. And it kind of made him realize, like, what he was really aiming for. Not less, I don't think it was insinuated he had killed Wednesday in the past. I mean, we know that even if you did potentially kill a god, if you got enough, followers and enough believers, you could potentially come back and everything. But I think that was just supposed to be a metaphor of, like, he now knows the battle that he was meant for. Like, his mind was kind of scattered and everything. And sadly, when the time came, Shadow didn't back away. And he's trying to even tell Shadow, it's like, you don't need to do this. What's also interesting, he made that line of, like, oh yeah, you know, if you eat a fairy's food, you're in their debt, which is interesting. Because at first I thought he was insinuating, because it's like, oh, they're eating the food that belonged to the banshees. So I was like, are you trying to insinuate the banshees count as fairies? Do they? I was just curious, like, maybe that was just him saying, you know, from his own perspective, you know. I even love Wednesday being like, fuck fairies. And being as crass as he is, you have Mad being like, oh, Salim, are you going to let him talk to us like that? That whole situation, so. And when it comes down to it, like, Shadow is protecting the spear because he's in a compromised position. He made a promise to Mad that no matter what happens, the fact is you won't get away. And when he initially made that promise, I wasn't 100% sure what way Mads meant that. Was he referring to, he's like, you'll know. Was he always planning to go after Wednesday and just this incited him to be like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do? Or was he insinuating the fact that something was going to go down with Laura? I thought he was initially kind of, I didn't know which way he initially interpreted that. Like, was he always going to go after Wednesday, or was he kind of implying, hey, I might go after Wednesday, or was he also kind of implying, like, yes, I might go after Laura thing? Like, I don't know which one of those three passes. Like, always was supposed to be Wednesday, insinuating it was going to be Wednesday, or just insinuating it was going to be Laura. And because it would make sense in any regard, but I guess in the end it kind of doesn't matter because this is the path we find ourselves on. Him, Wednesday, you have Shadow and Mad fighting like that. It's kind of interesting because it was kind of a very, like, even kilter fight back in season 1. It's a very one-sided, but to be fair, like, Mad's been drowning his sorrows. He's just been in his own head, so I feel like he's not all there for the fight, but Shadow's kicking his ass. And then he's like, the fact is, just leave here now. The fact of the matter is, your girl's car crash, your wife, that was me on Wednesday's orders. Like, wait, what? It's like, the fact of the matter is, he's using you like he does everyone else, to leave now. And then even admits, Laura, yep, I banged her in New Orleans. And before, you know, he tries to get the spear to go after Wednesday, and during the struggle, Shadow accidentally stabs him, and he's like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, the fact is, you know, Mads, one last double middle finger, sends Gungnir to the Horde. And it's like, holy shit. That is the most baller move you can make. Like, those double middle fingers have never been stronger, you know, as they were in that moment. And it's like, and him dying with the words, I was a king, you know. And so, maybe this is his retribution. Maybe this is his way of making up things for what happened to Laura, for everything that he, running away back then, not kind of choosing to stand up and fight when he had the chance, because even his wife was telling him to make peace with the Grey Monks, but because he was like, no, I'm not going to let them trample on everything that we believe. I guess for him, he didn't fight that battle back then. He believed the Grey Monks to be poison, and he looks at Wednesday the same way, and I think this was his way of making up for the fight he didn't fight back then. It's like, this is the war I was always meant to die in, and I changed the tides of things, so that's why I'm kind of like, maybe this kind of worked out in Bill Quest's win, because I think there is no way getting to the Horde, like, unless you found another leprechaun, but it might be something only like the king could do. That might be something only Mad could do, and with him dead, there's no undoing that. So Gungnir might be lost forever, potentially. I don't know. That's definitely interesting. It's funny, you went through the trouble getting the runes fixed, you got the spear fixed, and bam, it's gone. So that's ironic. Because you even had Wednesday being like, oh, it's what a waste and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see where all that kind of takes us going forward. You did kill one of your allies, but I guess, Wednesday doesn't care too much. I'm curious where the other gods are going to stand at the end of this all with, like, the whole situation with Mad. I mean, Mad knew going it, because even Mr. Abyss was like, you're not worried about tomorrow? He's like, that's none of your fucking business. So then there's everything with Laura, her meeting with Mama G this episode. I love that, like, Mama G's telling her to get out and everything, and Laura's not showing respect. Laura's like, I literally rip people in half, and she's like, oh, I'm going to show you who I am as the Destroyer. And that was Laura's head she was holding, wasn't it? I guess it's just kind of showing you, like, oh, like, kind of showing you, like, what your future will hold for you if we did go at it. I'd rip you apart. She's like, and then she calms down, she's like, all I'm asking for is respect. And she said some really interesting things to Laura, because Laura basically said all the stuff that, obviously, like, she learned in New Orleans of what she's going to need. And I love that Mama G was kind of like, oh, the fact of the matter is you have it within you the entire time. And it almost seems like one of those cliche things. She's like, what, the power of love or something like that? It's like, no, the power to destroy. So that makes me think, like, the fact is Mama G says that to her. It's very foreshadowing, especially with everything that goes down. I'm kind of thinking when it's all said and done, because I was actually kind of wondering if it was going to be Laura that ended up killing Mad. I thought just because of, like, the whole thing of, like, oh, like, a dead woman would be, associated with everything. So I was thinking, like, okay, so Laura's going to kill him because I thought maybe she'd come in, he's beating on Shadow, and she ends up killing him with a spear or something like that. Thought that was going to be the case. Totally not the case at all. But I guess it's, like, technically over the dead woman, in this case Laura, is kind of how everything kind of ended up falling out anyway. So I guess you can say, like, she had a role to play in just everything playing out the way it did, because Laura was kind of like the connective tissue of all of this. Obviously, like, Mads cares about her whether he admit it or not. Obviously, Shadow's wife, and obviously Wednesday being the one who orchestrated her death, so it's this whole thing. So maybe that's what it was kind of alluding to. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. But obviously, she's in Cairo now by the end of the episode, so that's definitely going to be interesting, especially now because Shadow knows the truth about Wednesday, so it's like, probably ain't no sticking around him, but he made a combo, so it's like, he's probably kind of bound by his word, what Shadow's kind of by that, but I'm curious to see what he's going to do. I'm kind of leaning towards a thought that maybe it's going to be Laura who ends up killing potentially Odin. The fact of the matter is, like, Mama G made that point of, like, you have great power within you, so is Shadow going to switch sides for this war, or what? I mean, like, because Mad said, like, fuck the gods, fuck all of them, so it's kind of, like I said, basically saying they're all assholes, so don't kind of turn away from all of this. So Shadow might not be on, like, Mr. World's side, might not be, I mean, maybe he'll switch sides to be on Mr. World's side just to spite Wednesday, or maybe he'd be on his own side, him and Laura. I don't know. Things are definitely heating up because obviously the war is, swelling up, and now with these new developments, it's definitely going to be interesting. I'm so fascinated to see what ends up happening with Laura, as well as seeing what happens with Shadow. Next week's episode is the season finale. It's going to be crazy to see where this all accumulates, because the lines have been drawn, because they were even talking about this episode of, like, who's on what side, we guaranteed what gods are on our side and stuff like that. So I'm so curious to see how this is all going to play out, because I do believe, this was straight up Mad's death. I don't think there's any coming back from. Maybe there is, maybe something's going to happen, but I think, in the end, he got what he wanted. He found peace. It does make you wonder whatever did happen to his wife and his daughter. I was thinking something, but I was like, that'd be weird. So, not even going to put it out there because I think it'd be weird. But regardless, like I said, I'm interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good